charming. As soon as you are, they will activate and everything.
They've been pretty good, just hanging out.
And those backpacks are awesome.
With what?
Thank you. Oh, I better. Oh my God, who's ringing me? Are you serious? You can't be ringing me.
I like the idea of like the council and kids being friends, you know. Oh, that's cute.
And look at Millie get on those.
Oh, good.
Why couldn't you put a
Go for it, Lena.
You could have got on with the job.
Hello, my colleagues. How are we today?
Good.
Good. Oh, I'm not that tall.
Okay, now we go.
No, you go
Suzanne,
I can start.
you saw the update for Bundoora, did you?
Okay.
Well, we don't have a screen.
Oh, ready? Okay. Okay, good evening. Is that on? Yeah. Good evening and welcome everybody to the City of Darebin Council meeting for Monday the 2nd of July 2018. Thank you all for braving the elements and joining us this evening. If you're streaming online, we welcome you also. My name is Councillor Lena Messina and I'm the Deputy Mayor, and I'm the Acting Mayor this evening and the Chairperson this evening. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land that we stand on here today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to the elders past and present, as well as other elders from other communities that be with us this evening. In the spirit of reconciliation and acknowledgement that today is the commencement of NAIDOC Week, I want to acknowledge the recent decision by the Australian Electoral Commission to rename the federal electorate of Batman to Cooper. The renaming of the electorate of the Batman reflects the spirit and intent of our community to the recognition building on work between council, traditional owners and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities connected to Darebin. William Cooper is the father of NAIDOC and founded the Aboriginals Advancement League, which remains in Darebin today. In addition, I want to acknowledge a historical point. The Victorian Parliament is the first in Australia to pass legislation on a new framework to negotiate a treaty with the first Australians. Now, onto the agenda for this evening. Councillors, I trust you all have a copy of the agenda. I draw your attention to item number 1, membership. Membership is as listed, with apologies. Councillor Greco, Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Williams and Councillor LeSurf, the Mayor. I draw your attention to Governance Law, Local Part 5, Council Meeting and Procedures, Division 1, Presence of Councillors. Councillors must be physically present in the council chamber in order to participate in the meeting and to vote. We require 5 councillors to make quorum. If there is a declaration of conflict, we will need to adjourn the motion to another meeting period no later than 14 days. In the event that there is a tie in the voting, under Clause 36, the chairperson has a second vote. Item number 3, disclosure of conflicts. Are there any disclosures of conflict this evening? Noted. Item 4, confirmation of the minutes of the council meeting. Does anybody want to move those motion? Councillor Rennie, a seconder. Councillor McCarthy. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Councillor, beg your pardon. Question 5. Question time is question time. Question 5 is question time and we have 30 minutes. Is there members of the public to ask a question or make comment or a submission online, in person, via email, via post or to council office prior to the council meeting? I have a few questions that have been submitted this evening. Are there any further questions in the audience this evening? Okay. Ooh. The first question I have is from Fred Johansson. Thank you, Fred, for your question. The question is the Darebin Community Legal Centre funded by or in any way supported by the Darebin City Council? And if so, what amount and what percentage of ratepayers' funds are utilised? Thank you for your question, Fred. Since 2011, Council has funded the Darebin Community Legal Centre on an annual funding agreement to provide a free legal outreach service in the areas of need. In the 2017-18 Council funded the centre of $14,157 to provide free legal outreach 1 day per week from the Whitelaw Street Community Hub in East Reservoir. In the 2017-18 Council meeting, also provided an additional one-off payments of $35,000 to support the centre to relocate from High Street Thornbury to Spring Street Reservoir, which will better align the service location to community need. The $49,157 provided to the centre in the 2017-18 year represents 0.04% of the total rates and charges income for the 17-18 budget. In the 15-16 and the 16-17 Council has also funded the centre of $35,000 each year to deliver family violence education programs to culturally and linguistically diverse women in Darebin. Figures provided are exclusive of GST. Percentage of the ratepayer funded is calculated based on the figure of $123,775,000. Yeah, I've got it. Question 2 is from Anne Laver of Northcote. The Northcote Leader reported $53 million outstanding in fines for Darebin. However, the March 2018 financial reports only stated $816,000 in total for bad and doubtful debts. Why is this? And were all these debts indicated in the financial report? Supplementary to that question, the budget indicates 14 capital works projects are carried over from the 2017-18 year, totalling over $4 million. Will they be completed in 18-19? The balance of Darebin's outstanding infringements is in order of $6 million. $1,816,000 is an expense item in the comprehensive income statement relating to the recognition of debts that are not going to be collected. The balance of the outstanding fines is recognised in the balance sheet items under Trade and Other Receivables, which is all for outstanding debtors, including rates, services provided by Council and infringements. The forecast balance for Trade and Other Receivables at 30th of June 2018 is $13.7 million. The budget 2018-19 details 19 items of capital works, totalling $36,789,000. They've been carried forward from the 2017-18 year. These projects are currently being designed or constructed and will be completed in the 2018-19 year. Question 2 from Anne. The Council advises no money in the budget for lighting in the parks to be improved, which is a safety issue. Why can't solar lights, which were most cost-effective, be installed, and can this be programmed in the 2018-19 year? Council has a long-held commitment to improve community safety. We are continuing to identify priority works of concern across Darebin and implementing actions to improve safety and reduce crime. Whilst there's no specific program in the budget for lighting parks, Council is progressively improving safety in parks through its Parks Improvement Programs. In the 2018-19, safety and other improvements have been developed through master planning design works for future use, including Edwards Park Lake, Mayor Park and Pendus Park. A number of play spaces will also be improved during the year. All Council's design work in parks prioritise safety. As for all our public open spaces are designed in accordance with crime prevention through environmental design principles, and all the spaces are inspected regularly by safety and compliance within Australian standards and other legislation. We will also work closely with Victoria Police regarding public safety, and the use of formal safety auditing process involves several site visits and inspections at different times of the day. Whether lighting would improve safety is assessed on a case-by-case scenario at each park. Solar lighting is not always the solution that provides most cost-effective in urban parks, because these parks can be readily accessible via electricity via the grid. Solar lighting requires batteries as well as solar panels, and the batteries used to push the costs up and above solutions. Generally, a more cost-effective solution is standard lighting when the purchase of renewable energy from the wind farms or any other Australian sources. However, we are constantly looking at new technologies. We have a question 3 from Brian Fairman. This question relates... Is Brian here? Oh, I beg your pardon. I did ask that it... No, it's okay. Please come to the podium. Thank you. I would like a rest.
Yeah, look, my question, you partly covered in Anne's question as well. Oh, yes, I will do that. Brian Fairman, 251 Raglan Street, Preston, just behind Florence Adams Reserve. And as I've indicated, my question is in relation to the lighting in Florence Adams Reserve. And so I'll just preamble this by saying that 72 members of the community petitioned Darebin Council in January 2016 to provide lighting in Adams Reserve, along with a barbecue and a water fountain. Now, we have the barbecue, and we're very happy about that, except the barbecue isn't turned on. And so it sat there for the last 10 months without electricity supplied to it. It's a lovely piece of architecture, but it's not functional. And we do have the water fountain, and it's wonderful. The dogs love it because it leaks a little bit, so they always get a little bit of water at the bottom of it. On the substantive issue of lighting, which was why we petitioned the council, because we were concerned about the security issues that happen through that Adams Reserve. And so the question is a simple one. Could council please inform the community about their intentions to provide adequate lighting in Adams Reserve? That's the first question. And the second question, which is seemingly a simple question, when will the barbecue be turned on? Now, I've communicated on behalf of the representatives of the 72 people that petitioned 2+ years ago, and I've continued email correspondence to a number of councillors over this issue, but I haven't actually had any formal indication of any of the
Thank you for your question.
responses, and that's it.
Thank you for your question. Council considers priorities across the city as a whole, and at this stage there are no plans to installing additional lights at Adams Reserve. As part of the 16-17... you've actually asked your 2 questions. Can I please formally reply? If I can formally reply, thank you. As part of the 16-17 capital budget, a sum of $50,000 was allocated to the upgrade of Adams Reserve. This sum funded several works nominated in the petition, including upgrade to the barbecue area, landscaping and seating. To prioritise and develop works at Adams Reserve, the community was consulted and there were strong views both for and against lighting and barbecue in the park. Officers assessed safety in the park in 2016 and lighting and the barbecue in the park. Officers assessed, safety of the park in 2016 and lighting was assessed as a low priority. This assessment considered, amongst other points, the number of people using the area and the fact that there are alternative pedestrian routes with the lighting. I acknowledge the barbecue is not working and I apologise for this. Since installation, council officers have been pressing Jenna to turn the power on the new barbecue because of a clerical error. Basically, it was a clerical error on their part and this has not taken place. We are still working on this and hope to have it working as soon as possible. Question 4 is from Maria Preletti. Data from the 2016 ABS census show that there was a number of decline in the number of 3-bedroom dwellings in Darebin since 2011. Darebin's housing policy 2015 estimates there's an increase of 27% of 3-bedroom dwellings is required to meet our future housing needs. The ABS data shows there's a number of 22% increase in homelessness of children under 12 since 2001. What has this council done, different to the last, to ensure the future housing needs of the families with the children are met, in part through the required increase in the number of 3-bedroom dwellings? Council is acting in accordance with the Darebin housing strategy and has been clear in its advocacy for mix of dwelling types to meet these diverse needs of our population. This includes all dwelling types as opposed to the single focus on 3-bedroom dwellings. In recent times, there have been, however, significant increase in planning permits approved that include 3-bedroom dwellings, where obviously this was minimal. Council has a strong and long-standing commitment to try and address these needs for housing for all our community and has been actively advocating for affordable housing and housing to meet the needs of the whole community. This financial year, Council is reviewing its housing strategy and associated policies to see what else can be needed to meet future needs. Council is exploring use of some of its own land for affordable housing and also calling on all 3 levels of government to tackle this challenge. Question 2 by Maria is, what will this council do to ensure an increase in 3-bedroom dwellings in Darebin during their tenure? Council will continue to provide focus on encouraging mix of housing to support the diverse needs of our population, and this includes advocating and requiring 3-bedroom dwellings as a part of an integrated response to future housing needs. So we just go. Okay. Question 5 is a comment about the shopping street at Edward Street, basically in the Reservoir area, and is submitted by the Reservoir News Agency regarding the streets, the seating and the drinking in that particular area. We have taken your note on comment and we will respond. Thank you very much. Question 6 is from Peter Thompson from Reservoir. Are you here? Oh, apologies. I was not made aware of that. Would you like me to read your question? Thank you. Out of duty of conscience, I bring to your attention on the 5th of December 2016, during the public question time, I lodged a handwritten City of Darebin pro forma read the above subject, which does not mention any subject on here, so I'm sorry. This is in accordance with receiving it attested by a minute number 29 as per the 12th of December 2016 and replied to a calling to me in part of delegated enforcement to VicPol by the local law clause in your power and thus addressed. It is with much concern that I've discovered that the above-mentioned activity continues up to and including today, the 2nd of July 2018, that has also been confirmed by other interested parties, stakeholders, when canvassing in this shopping zone at a constant cohort of reactivists persist. I have no idea. Could you please give me some indication as to what area we're referring to? There's no mention of a particular area in your question. I'm sorry, Peter. It's not. I have no heading or any description type, so. Thank you. If you just bear with me a moment. Okay, the question is regarding the consumption of alcohol in the defined dry zones areas in Reservoir. Thank you. The local free areas in Darebin are designated by Council under the provision of Clause 11.1 of the Darebin City Council General Local Law Number 1. We are not avoiding or ignoring your obligations. Local laws concerning alcohol are instigated in consultation with the Victoria Police. They are introduced to provide the police and another enforcement tool to assist them in dealing with situations which may escalate into more serious antisocial behaviour. The police only rely on Council's local law when there is no other tool available to them under the state legislation to appropriately respond to the persons consuming alcohol in public. Section 224A of the Local Government Act 1989 is a section of the state legislation that enables the police to be authorised under the Council's local law for enforcement. Any provisions of the local law that deals with the consumption or possessions in a designated area. Question 2. I bring your attention to the series of community workshops held on the 27th of February and the 1st of March this year and ask what is the status and outcomes of the community consultation and inputs given to the City of Darebin. I attended the second event and my name recorded, but since then they have seen or heard nothing from some 4+ months ago. Is in the best interest of public safety and amenity for the people in Reservoir, I await your reply at your earliest convenience to return correspondence. Council has been, and the reply is, Council has been working with the consultant to refine the draft report, which has now been completed. There will be further community consultation in July to form a reference group to discuss the concept plans. Thank you for your question. And the last question this evening is from David Schultz. Multi-sport stadium, $33 million has been budgeted for the stadium, with $5 million from the Darebin Council. The state government have refused to fund the stadium, so how does the council propose to fund the stadium? Council has allocated $5.989 million in the budget of 2018-19 to commence the design of the women's multi-sport stadium, car park entry and the construction of the outdoor courts. It is Council's intention to continue to seek grant funding opportunities and advocate for in funding in relation to women's multi-sport stadium from both state and federal government. At this stage, there is no commitment has been given by the state government, but nor has it actually refused the funding. Unless Council provide further, sorry, I beg your pardon. My question is, the answer is that they refused. There has been no refusal to grant the funding. Question number 2. Councillor Tim Lawrence stated at the last council meeting that $94 million was allocated to the southern end of the Darebin in the budget. Apart from the multi-sport stadium and Beavers Road Bridge, what other projects make up this amount? And more importantly, why is this little money set aside for the northern end of the city, which is seeing significant increase in development? Budget allocations are made according to prioritised need, taking into account asset conditions, existing master plans and established policies. As a result, expenditure varies across different parts of the municipality each year. And that is the end of question time. I think I asked that at the beginning. Okay. Are there any other further questions in the audience this evening? Okay, that is the end of public question time. Petitions. Are there any petitions this evening, Councillor Laws? No. Any items under urgent business? Item number 8 is consideration of reports. 8.1, Victorian State Election 2018. Do we have a mover? A seconder? Councillor Rennie? Councillor McCartney. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Rennie?
Yes, thank you. This is a very important item because this item is about how we as council advocate for the needs of our community into the future. Obviously there is a state election coming up in a few months' time, and this is an opportunity to let the state government know, and both political parties, what it is that is required by the residents of Darebin, not just next year, but in a generation to come. And I think that is the really important thing to note here, that the things we're advocating for, which I'm about to talk about, are intergenerational infrastructure. These are the big projects that are going to shape and change Darebin for the future to make it very livable, to make it a fantastic place to live. It is already, but these are the projects that are required to maintain that. So, Council has determined that the things that we must advocate for most strongly in the lead up to this state election include the level crossing removal program, with a focus on removing 4 level crossings in the Preston area, being Oakover, Bell, Kramer and Murray, and the removal of the reservoir level crossing in such a way that we are able to fix up the road system. So we know in Reservoir that it's not just the level crossing that causes difficulties for our community. We know that it's also the complicated road network that really divides the two sides of the suburb, and fixing that is an absolute priority. So level crossing removals, firstly. Next, the preparation of a detailed feasibility study for an extension of the number 11 tram to Reservoir Station. This is a tram extension that has been talked about for decades, and now is an opportunity to make it happen. We had the now member for Cooper, or Babbitt, sounds good to say that.
Cooper.
Is it formally changed already? No. Make a commitment at a federal level to actually putting some money behind this project. So the timing is really fantastic for us to also throw our weight behind advocacy to get the state government to commit to this project. A community should not have to advocate for a tram extension for 50 years. You know, many other trams have been extended across Melbourne, so that's one we want. And third, we need significant financial commitment from the state government towards a number of recreation infrastructure projects. We need the Women's Multi-Sport Stadium to be built, the Northcote Aquatic Centre and the Reservoir Leisure Centre to be rebuilt and upgraded. And these are the facilities that our growing community will need into the future. And it's really important, I think, that Council actually exercise all its advocacy power in the same direction so that we can get these things happening for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Councillor McCarthy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. It should be no surprise that these are the projects that Council is putting forward to the state election candidates to consider in their pledges to the community. What we have is, as Councillor Rennie has rightly pointed out, a package of projects that are about intergenerational infrastructure. They're also about playing catch-up in some respects with the infrastructure that we and our community deserves to have but hasn't had because of an underinvestment in previous decades. And I'll just draw Council's attention back to the very reason why the multi-sport stadium, the Women's Multi-Sport Stadium, is up there and is absolutely critical and was the focus in our advocacy during the Northcote by-election last year, is because in areas like Darebin, in areas like the northern suburbs, and of course also out in the west as well, there has been a significant underinvestment in infrastructure that supports women and girls' participation in sport, and that has a direct impact on participation rates, which is why our participation rates here in Darebin for women in team sports is around 10 to 15%, and it should be much, much higher. In fact, our target is 40%. We cannot achieve our targets and we cannot see that participation unless we see this investment in infrastructure. And I just wanted to make the point as well that no candidate who is serious about standing for election in this neck of the woods should be standing unless they've got a position on these issues. And if they can't support these projects, then they should have a good justification as to why they can't, because the evidence has been demonstrated for decades in the case of the number 11 tram. In fact, it's coming up to 80 years, I understand, and one of our 90-plus year members moved into the area of what was known as the Tramways Estate as a young bride and expecting to be able to catch the tram, and the tram never arrived.
10 seconds.
So there should be no surprises here, and I hope that all political parties and all politicians, aspiring and current, get on board.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Any further speakers? Councillor Amir.
Councillor Rennie and Councillor McCarthy have very clearly outlined why these three projects are really important to us as a council. But what I'm also hoping is that between now and in the state election happening in November, that we can have support from the community in advocating for these things as well. So one of the reasons why we've selected these three items, partly because we need investment in infrastructure, partly because they're important to us as a council, but also because these are three of the things that the community keeps asking for over and over and over. In my inbox right now, I have many emails about these three issues. It's very clear that the community wants better public transport, they want better infrastructure, including for Northcote and Reservoir. And you know, we've had lots of discussions, including at the budget meeting the other week, around these two centres, and there was very strong support for the upgrade of both being equally important to our community. And also the level crossing removal works in around Bell Station and in Reservoir. Both of these are not just about making it easier for the cars to cross or for trains to get through. It's about changing the way the precinct looks, hopefully about giving space back to the community, especially if we can get those 4 removals through Preston, to be able to, I suppose, set up those central Preston and central Reservoir areas to support the growing needs of our growing population, to set us up not just for, you know, the next 3 years of this council term, but for decades into the future as well. So for anyone who's maybe listening online, in the audience, reading about it in the paper next week. We hope that we can all work together to do whatever we can to get commitment from our lead candidates for Northcote, for Preston, for Bundoora, to make these things happen.
Thank you, Councillor Amir. Any other further speakers? Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Messina. I just really want to emphasise that I completely agree with the first three speakers, particularly, and speak to what's important for Latrobe Ward. So when I ran for council, probably the number one thing that people spoke to me about was the level crossing removal. It's been a long time coming. I was at Reservoir Primary last week speaking to them about safety of the children there. It's a really dangerous crossing at the moment. The roads go everywhere, and we really, really want to push the state government to really look at the roads around there, not just the level crossing itself. The number 11 tram was another huge one. We're seeing a lot of development around Gilbert Road in that area. This one's a no-brainer, I think, and we've had a commitment from our new federal MP. I see no reason why we shouldn't be getting the same sort of commitment from our state MP for Preston. In terms of the Reservoir Leisure Centre, this is one that comes up all the time, and I would really, really like to see this upgraded. So very much looking forward to the next few months of getting the community supporting what we think and reflecting what they want. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newton. Let's put that to all's in favour. That motion is carried. Item 8.2, Environmental Upgrade Agreement Opportunity for Council and Businesses. Do I have a mover? Councillor McCarthy, a seconder? Councillor Amir. Councillor McCarthy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. It is a shame that our Mayor is not able to be here tonight because she and I have both have a passion for EUAs, and it's rare that you would say that you have a passion for an acronym like EUAs until you know what they are. And so I'm just going to give a quick outline because EUAs are one of those mechanisms that we currently don't have access to here in Darebin, but in fact 19 other councils in Victoria have already taken advantage of them through the Sustainable Melbourne Fund, which was being set up by the City of Melbourne. It was a hard fight to get EUA legislation through to make this possible, but effectively what our resolution tonight will do is enable our Chief Executive Officer, through the proper processes as are outlined in the report, to authorise agreements which effectively undertake what are called environmental upgrade agreements. And this means that we can leverage private investment, public investment, a real collaborative and cooperative approach to get those sorts of sustainability dividends, but also those job opportunities that we know are generated when we start to improve our building stock. There is one provider of EUAs in Victoria, and that, of course, is the Sustainable Melbourne Fund. It is also known as the Better Building Finance Fund, and its track record so far is actually incredibly impressive. So far, it's delivered 38 projects by 19 councils, delivering or reducing 14,000 tonnes of emissions per annum, and generating $23 million in investment in renewables and efficiency, both in terms of energy and water. Now, they're the sorts of numbers that we here in Darebin want to be part of, because we have made a commitment as the first council in the world to declare a climate emergency and to commit to 18 megawatts of solar in our city. We need every mechanism that we can find to get there. And one of the biggest challenges is the split incentive that exists when it comes to rental households. We are often asked with programs like Solar Savers, what about renters? How do renters buy into this? Well, when it comes to EUAs, EUAs mean that we reduce and remove the split incentive situation. It means that both renters and owners can actually both benefit from a scheme like Solar Savers. So this is very exciting. The mechanism that we're putting in place tonight basically says a green light to EUAs. It means that we have that power within this organisation now to move in that direction, and of course for our community to benefit from that, whether it's private businesses, community members, whoever it might be. We have actually identified EUAs as an action we want to undertake in our climate emergency plan, and identified that around 20 businesses saving around 250 kilowatts, producing 250 kilowatts of solar through an EUA type model. So we've already put this on our agenda. It should be no surprise that we're adopting this tonight, and I look forward to hearing about lots of EUA agreements being signed over coming years.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Amir.
It's really exciting to see this happening when we're putting our climate emergency plan into practice. And as Councillor McCarthy said, we're really proud of the work we've been doing with Solar Savers, which is mostly focused around residential homes. But of course, the missing piece there is when it comes to businesses and rented property. So it's very exciting that we can now put this in place. My vision, ideally, would eventually we have solar panels on every building in Darebin. And of course, moving into some of those other areas that increase good sustainability outcomes. Hopefully, it would be beneficial not just for environmental outcomes, not just for helping council achieve our ambitious goals, but also cost savings for businesses and of course the jobs that come with that. And we know that those jobs in green energy, in green building, it's an area that's only growing, and so I'm proud that Darebin can be leading on this.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? Let's all put that to the vote. All's in favour? Thank you. That motion is carried. Item number 8.3, Environmental Sustainability Design Building Policy. Do we have a mover? Councillor Amir, a seconder. Councillor Rennie, would you like to speak to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Amir.
So the motion we have here is the adoption of the Darebin Environmentally Sustainable Design Building Policy. So this applies to council buildings. Council owns over 400 buildings and structures, and it's exciting to have this here tonight. First off, I'd like to say thank you to Janine Parker and Libby Hines for your hard work on this. Basically, what we've got here is an outline of all the ways that council buildings, when they're built, when they're renovated, when they're purchased, upgraded, will be helping to achieve the environmental sustainability goals. We've got a really strong council focus on addressing climate change, such as the climate emergency you've just been speaking about. And through this plan, there's a focus on 10 different areas, including the indoor environmental quality, energy efficiency, water efficiency, stormwater management, building materials, transport, waste management, urban ecology, innovation and construction and building management. So looking at all the different aspects that impact not just on the sustainability of the building itself, but also once people are living there, working there, accessing services there, that they can do so in a way that reduces the carbon footprint and reduces the impact on the environment. So I suppose there's a lot in here that goes into quite a lot of detail, but the high level side is that we'll have a minimum 5-star minimum environment requirement for all major buildings, major upgrades, medium-sized buildings, and hopefully see some 6 stars happening there too. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Amir. Councillor Rennie.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Messina. It's a real pleasure to speak in favour of this tonight, and I think it actually ties in really nicely with the EUA motion that we've just passed. In fact, I don't think we can really advocate for one without also doing the other. Because if we're to persuade businesses, enterprises in our community to sign up to upgrade their buildings and their facilities, then we need to be showing leadership ourselves. And this policy is about the internal leadership that council can show. But also there are very real and tangible benefits to our community and our employees in upgrading our own buildings and in making sure that any new buildings are built to a very high standard. We know from a study that has been undertaken on the green building by the Green Building Council about the value of the Green Star program, that buildings that meet that benchmark use 66% less electricity than average Australian buildings. They produce 62% fewer greenhouse gas emissions than average Australian buildings. They use 51% less potable water, and 96% of their construction and demolition waste is recycled, compared to 58% for the average building, which obviously has very significant impacts for landfill. But more importantly, and lesser known in terms of the benefits, are that employers and employees in buildings, in constructions that meet this benchmark, average 2.88 fewer sick days every year, and productivity by workers is up 15%. And I think that just goes to show that being green and being sustainable is actually only part of the picture. This is also about being healthy. And we want healthy buildings run by council, and also we want those to be embraced by the community in the EUAs.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Messina. Just briefly, I really think this is a very important thing that we're doing. I think that this is moving us into a space where it's not do as we say, it's do as we do. So if we expect the development applications that come to us to have good ESD standards, I think that we should be doing the same with our buildings, which I think is why this is a really, really important policy. And I really think it's wonderful that we're showing that we're leaders in this area, and I look forward to seeing what comes of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newton. Any further speakers? Councillor McCarthy.
So few of us here tonight, I thought it... But also, I just wanted to highlight one thing which I think is an obvious question when you look at a report like this, which is, and I think it's a reasonable question for people that might not have experienced this sort of a program before, which is, how much is it going to cost? Is it worth it? And why aren't you spending money on X, Y or Z? And I want to address that directly because I think we can often miss those sorts of questions that people raise. Councillor Rennie has pointed out very clearly the individual personal health benefits for people, the reduction in sick days. Those are all quantifiable benefits for the organisation because it means that we don't actually have people off sick when they should be and could be engaged positively at work. But there's also a really obvious thing here, which is that when you make your buildings more sustainable, it means that their running costs over time are reduced. It also means that often their maintenance costs are reduced, and the initial and additional increase in costs at the start of the project is paid back in full and often in multifold. We've actually allocated an additional 4% to the cost of our buildings projects in order to enable these sorts of efficiencies to be included. And we've done that understanding that in the life cycle of a building, whether it's a building that we occupy for 20, 30, 40 or 50 years, that dividend will be paid back many times over. So we all know when you build a house, if you do it properly at the start, you don't have problems down the track. And we're having to deal with, obviously, issues with our buildings which are the result of other practices in the past, decades earlier. But we don't need to keep doing that. We can actually do the right thing straight up. We can make our buildings comfortable, efficient, not energy vampires, but actually positive energy producers. And that's where the synthesis of what Councillor Rennie said before, really projecting that message of how to do this, it really comes into getting our own house in order, and that's what we're doing here tonight.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Let's all put that to vote. All in favour? That motion is carried. Thank you. Item 8.4, endorsement of the Darebin Community Awards Advisory Committee, new members. Do I have a mover? Councillor Rennie. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Newton. Thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion of Councillor Rennie?
Yes, thank you. It's very exciting tonight to be able to appoint the committee that is going to decide on the Darebin Community Awards. And I think one of the reasons it's very exciting is because, in fact, these are the first awards that we've had since we've essentially restructured the program and decided to no longer give out awards on the 26th of January. So I'm delighted tonight to make the recommendation that we endorse the following committee members: Alan Brown, Carol Harrison, Andrew Callon and Mojjan Tosif, George Yang, Marie Sloan and Zainab Farah. And all of these people have demonstrated an interest in being part of this process, and they come from and represent diverse groups within Darebin. So as a point of reference, was determined that it would be appropriate to appoint 2 people from the Darebin Aboriginal Advisory Committee, a representative from the Darebin Ethnic Communities Council, and several community members. And those names that I put forward tonight are a reflection on that previous determination that this would be a good way to go about establishing a committee. And this committee has a very important role ahead of them. They will be recognising the achievement of community members who have made an outstanding contribution to the Darebin community, in the following award categories: Citizen of the Year, Young Citizen of the Year, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Community Leader of the Year, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Emerging Community Leader of the Year, and Community Group of the Year. And I think it's going to be incredibly exciting few months as they undertake that very important work, leading to a time when we will be able to announce the winners of this award. I might leave it there. Thank you.
Councillor Rennie, and I'll ask the seconder also to, and please note the names and please correct if there's any, advise if there are any incorrect names up there, please.
Alan, Carol, Andrew, George. I can confirm that those are the names.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Councillor Newton, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Melissa. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Acting Mayor Messina. Excuse me. So I really want to say how wonderful it is that we're able to recommend these committee members tonight. I'm really excited about seeing what they decide to choose for our new awards. I'd particularly like to mention Alan and Carol, who are members of our Darebin Aboriginal Advisory Committee. They're really, really wonderful leaders of their community, and I think in NAIDOC Week it's really, really wonderful to have people who have done so much and continue to fight for their community every day. I also know Marie Sloan, who does some very, very good work with an organisation called Work for the Soul. They have an op shop in Preston, and the way that Marie works with her community indicates to me that she'll be a wonderful representative for this committee. And I'm very, very, very happy to see these names there tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newton. Any further speakers? Let's all put that to the vote. All in favour? That motion is carried. Thank you. Item 8.5, Bundoora Homestead Board membership. Do we have a mover? Councillor Newton. Do we have a seconder? Councillor McCarthy. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Newton?
Yes, thank you, Acting Mayor Messina. Now, I believe that we have an amended officer recommendation. Can I clarify that with the CEO?
We do. We'll just wait for one moment.
Sure.
There it is.
Great. So I'm going to read out the motion just so it's clear. So the motion is that Council endorses Kirsten Matthews, Valentina Maxwell Tansley, Cade McDonald, JD Mittman, Lyndall Weischer and Jeanette Lewis as members of the Bundoora Homestead Board of Management for a second two-year term from the 2nd of July 2018 to the 1st of July 2020. And point 2, endorses Kathy Henderson, General Manager Community, as a member of the Bundoora Homestead Board of Management to be reviewed at the special meeting of Council each year.
Does the seconder approve of that? Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would, thank you. So this is a board that I am on, and these members have already served, I believe it's a year, on the Bundoora Homestead Board of Management. This is a really, really excellent committee with a range of expertise and skills from the arts and culture sector. I think that under their leadership, I think that the Bundoora Homestead has really grown and achieved more than it ever has before. And I'm really excited to see what they do in the next two-year term. And I'm also very pleased to have Kathy on the board as well. Kathy is one of our new GMs, and we had a recent strategic planning day at the Bundoora Homestead Board of Management. So we'll be able to see even more about how good that centre can be. And if anyone hasn't been, I'd absolutely recommend that you go and make sure you have a nice lunch there.
Thank you, Councillor Newton. Councillor McCarthy, would you like to speak to the motion?
I don't have a great deal to add to Councillor Newton. I'm just really pleased to see that people who make a voluntary commitment to a board like this, which is a bit unlike our other boards and our other committees, because this is actually a board of management that has very specific responsibilities under the Act, are keen all to continue on for another couple of years. And that's a demonstration of the strategy which is brought to us here at Council some time ago, which we got behind, provided some additional investment and support to some of the promotional activities that the board identified would support the Bundoora Homestead, but significantly that continuity in leadership at that level now exists, and of course some great new ideas I'm sure that Kathy will bring to the board as well. Bundoora Homestead is going from strength to strength. There's no question there, and it's a very exciting time, an exciting board, and I think we're really lucky to have people with such talent and insight willing to give up their time. So I'd like to not only endorse the recommendation, but also just a vote of thanks to those members who give up their time for that purpose, because there's plenty of other boards and committees they could be involved in, and they choose to do that right here in Darebin.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Are there any further speakers? Let's all put that to the vote. All in favour? That motion is carried. Item number 9, consideration of response to petitions, notices of motion and general business. There are none. Item 10, notice of motions. There are none. Reports of standing committee. There is nil. Item 12, records of assemblies of councillors. Do I have a mover? Councillor McCarthy and a seconder. Councillor Amir. Would you like to speak to the motion? No. Let's put that to the vote. All in favour? That motion is carried. Item number 13, reports by mayors and councillors. You all have that in front of you. Do I have a mover? Councillor Rennie, a seconder. Councillor Amir. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Item 14, consideration of reports considered confidential. There are none. Item 15, closure of meeting. Thank you very much.
Good work, Lena.
Thank you. That's it? How do I turn the screen on?
Kim was watching.
Is it finished? Can I say something? I need to say something. Finished? No, it wasn't. Those questions were disgusting. No, I was